Today, we're looking at this weekend's upcoming matches and a brief little preview about what we can expect to see from the teams involved. So join me as we take a look forward into some international rugby action. What's going on, everyone, and welcome back along to your home of rugby. I hope you're doing well as we get to the close end of another week and some more international rugby fixtures to look forward to, as well as some more big games to see how these teams are tracking on the path towards the Rugby World Cup. We've got 4 big Summer Nations series matches, as they call it here from World Rugby, and we've also got about 3 of the lesser, just normal international matches as teams like Samoa and Uruguay, Georgia, etc. build their way towards the Rugby World Cup. So I'm going to have a little quick look at these matches coming up, tell you my thoughts and how I think these games may possibly go. And if you join me, let me know your comments as well and who you think is going to win these games as the World Cup builds ever closer. So let's kick things off. Game number 1 of the weekend. The biggest game, essentially, maybe with a bit of a 50-50 there for a couple. But Wales and South Africa, the first real test we're going to see between the North and the South before the Rugby World Cup really kicks into gear. Of course, in the future, we've got the Wallabies taking on France in the final game pretty much before the World Cup kicks off. But this one will be a bit of a test for the Welsh, I think, more than it will be for the Springboks. The Springboks have gone pretty much all out here looking at their team. It's about as good a Springbok team as you could possibly think of. I'm expecting sides to go a little bit more conservative in these last few weeks building up to the Rugby World Cup, seeing the injuries we've seen to guys like Romain Intermac and Cyril Bailey for France. We've also seen the loss of Van Portenveld for England, and of course the suspensions going on. We'll talk about that more in just a moment. But first with South Africa, where I think they really may rue is naming Manie Libbok in the side, starting at number 10. We know it's not their strongest area. We know the next man in the queue there is Damian Willemse. So that's a bit of a drop-off there with the way those guys have been playing. And, of course, the Handré Pollard situation as well. What are they actually hoping for? Is this just a case of putting out your best team and hoping for the best, crossing those fingers that nothing will go wrong? You look at this team, and it's really good. Jean Klein is starting in the second row with R.G. Snyman, possibly an area where we've got extreme depth and not really nailing down with the best guys there. But the back row sees the return of Captain Fantastic. Khaleesi is back in the lineup starting at 6, which again, for South Africa, that is your open side player. Dan Hendrickson comes back into the team. Now, we've not seen him for a long time. The injury to Grant Williams, the fact they've picked 600 scrum halves for their World Cup team is very interesting to see him back in that mix, and he needs that start, which we've not seen from him all season long so far. The back 3 look exciting as either Ches and Colby's on the left wing with Kanamuri on the right, and no space this time for Arendse, but we know he's going to be around this team for a very long time. Delendi and Kreuler in that midfield, and like I said, it's a very good South African team that is going to be very hard to beat. I don't care where you're playing. This is a very good side. And this is half the reason why I expect this team to be front runners or one of the front runners for the Rugby World Cup. Yes, they have problems or question marks through those halves. Maybe not at 9 so much, but the combination in the number 10 jumper. If Manie Libbok can step up, does Handré Pollard come in later? There's so much to go on with the Springbok side yet that we have not seen. But for this weekend, I think they're pretty well set. And when they've got coming up against them is a Welsh side who over the last 2 weeks, on paper, you look at their games and their teams and the way that they've played, they look like they've done fairly well because the scorelines reflect quite kindly in their favour. If you look at last week, you just look at the game and say 19-17 loss to England a month out from the World Cup. You'd probably take that quite happily, wouldn't you? Beating England 20 points to 9, 5 weeks out from a Rugby World Cup, you'd say, yeah, good stuff, Wales. You're looking quite all right here in this build-up. But factor in the team that England played in their opening game. Very much a C team, D team. It was pretty much out and out. No real chance of any of those players looking at the World Cup bar, just a handful. Fast forward that week into last week, down to 12 players, and still Wales couldn't get that job done. The fact that Farrell was red carded, they had a number of other players on yellow cards. How did they not finish that game off with a 3-man advantage? Just goes to tell me that Wales aren't quite in the position that they would hope they are, or that the scoreline really reflects that they may well be. There has been a bit of a setback for the Welsh side just earlier, a few hours ago of recording this, that the originally named squad has undergone a couple of changes, big changes as well. Dan Biggar and Liam Williams, not super injured, but just not 100% fit for this game. They've been left out of the side, as well as a couple of others as well, and some late changes to their starting lineup. But still, doesn't change the effect and doesn't change how I feel this match will go. They're going to struggle this weekend, and I think the Springboks are going to put a bit of pain on this one as well. So I expect a big win for the visiting side. Yes, everyone's on the road now. Wales are at home, Principality Stadium in Wales. So look out for the Springboks to put on a bit of a performance here. They're going all out, and I think they're going to win this one by about 13 points. Unlucky for only the Welsh. Moving on to what will arguably be the most important game, along with that Wales-South Africa game, will be Ireland versus England. Now, before we take a look too much at teams or squads or anything like that, the fact of the matter is that we have the whole Owen Farrell situation wobbling around now that he's been let off by that Six Nations judiciary, and now World Rugby's come and appealed that judiciary. At the time of recording this, there's been no further decision. So, what will it look like this weekend? It won't actually matter, because England have left out Owen Farrell. They've gone with George Ford to run the show at 10, and the rest of the team, I think, is pretty up there with what they will look to use throughout this Rugby World Cup. They've gone pretty much with a full strength lineup. So that does, if anything, give you an indication, or will give you an indication, as to what this team can do. The midfield of Tuolangi and Marchand will be exciting to watch. But what is really interesting in this team is the two wings. So they've gone with Elliot Daly and Anthony Watson on the left and right side respectively, and Ollie Lawrence is the only sort of back replacement on the bench. So no out-and-out, pacey, sort of expectant guy on those wings. Anthony Watson, versatile guy, as is Elliot Daly, like we know. So, are we looking at a game plan of England to use the middle of the park more than those outside channels? Expectantly, it is England playing after all. So a good team. I think we're going to learn a lot about what this England team really is made of this weekend, especially because up against them is Ireland. A team, again, a front runner for the Rugby World Cup. Have they named a B-side? Have they gone a little bit off the scales? No. They've not gone off the scales at all. They have gone with a pretty strong looking side. You look through the big names there. Very strong back row of Omani and Van der Fly back in there together. James Lowe's still in the mix. He's coming in on the left wing. And Mac Hansen, the two import wingers together. Speed. Those guys got speed. So there's a big opportunity for Ireland to take an advantage of over there. Keenan's at fullback. But the only thing is Ross Byrne running the show at 10. Of course, we know there's no Sexton involved in this lineup yet. That's going to be their pressure point, and that's going to be where they show if they are actually contenders with this sort of system under the command of a guy like Byrne. Jack Crowley's on the bench as well. Conor Murray's not starting. Gibson Park will get the nod in the number 9 jumper. But all in all, I think this is a very nice, strong-looking Irish side. Big ups to Keith Earls here. I've just noticed is playing his 100th Test match as well, off the bench, wearing 23. So that'll be a very big moment for him. He's been a legend of the Irish game. Keith Earls has been around what feels like forever. This is an important game. An important game more for the watchers, and I think the coaches and the players individually more than anything. Structure, performance around set piece is going to be really, really important for these two sides to see what stage they're at. And it's going to be a good test. I think it's going to be a high-level test match that both of these sides need to stand up for. And it's going to go a long way towards other sides looking at these teams and going, we need to watch these guys out. Or here is areas that we can target against teams like Ireland or against England, who have, especially England, possibly, potentially, a tough World Cup pool. So a nice-looking Ireland side here. But what I'm excited about is the fact that we get to see two teams not going complete B team, giving it most of what we'd expect them to be if this was almost a World Cup matchup. Moving on from those big two games, we've got a couple of not so huge games. We have Italy versus Romania. Now, let's be fair for the Italians. This should be a pumping. Romania have looked really poor in the build-up to this Rugby World Cup, getting dumped in a big way. 50-point thrashing, 56-6 to the Georgians last weekend, and losing to the United States, who aren't even in the Rugby World Cup, 31-17. So they've got a long way to go. They've just named their squad, however, so maybe a little bit settled now with the squad they're going to go with, but this is going to be a hugely tough ask. You think about Italy from a Tier 1 nation, if you're, say, South Africa, or the All Blacks, the Wallabies, England, France. Those teams will look at Italy as a team that they can grind down and ultimately beat down and win comfortably enough. For a side like Romania, for a side like down in those lower ends, the Portugals, the Chiles, stuff like that, Italy is quite a high tier up above them. So this is going to be a tough match for the Romanians. The Italians, though, they need a performance. They have looked, I think, in their build-up games, quite good. Against Ireland, they went down 33-17, and they did play Scotland the week before that in a quite contested match-up in terribly poor conditions. So they've had a lot of build-up, they've had a lot of practice, and they've looked okay. I think they're about where we kind of expect them to be. They need to take that to the next level. Are they going to be able to show that really against Romania? No, not really. They win this one by 15, 20 points. It'll be like, yeah, that's what we kind of thought. They need to win this one by 40, 50, 60 points. They need to do what Georgia did. That is the comparison that we're going to go to if Italy can't get this big job done against the Romanians. As for Romania, though, they just need to pull this out. They just need to give this everything they've got. There's no shame in losing a game to Italy, but we need to see something. We need to see points from them. They can't lose this with just 6 points on the board. They need 10, 15 points on the board. If they lose by 60, that's okay. Just put some points on the board yourself as well. Or show some defensive effort. Limit the Italians to just 25 points. That's something they can take from this game if they can get either attack-wise or a defensive-wise structure into their match. They will look a lot better for it. Our fourth game of the Summer Nations series is quite an intriguing one, actually. Now, it shouldn't really rate highly as a massively competitive matchup, but France versus Fiji is going to be very interesting. So what everyone's going to be watching about this game between France and Fiji is that number 10 jumper for the French. Of course, no Intermac anymore, so where do they go? Do they try and protect what they've got left there? Do they just go all out? This is Fiji, and they are going to either hurt you in aggressive physical ways, or they're going to hurt you in fitness ways, because we know how they're going to play. And this is going to be really interesting from a Fijian standpoint as well, because we want to know how they go against a top structured Tier 1 nation. We've seen them dismantle Japan, Tonga, Samoa, all of the above, relatively on their terms. Now they've got a true test. I want to see France go out here, and I think no matter what France put out, whether it's their top team or it's a couple of tiers below, this is still going to be a really good test for Fiji. And we get to see if they can actually step up to the mark and deliver a very good performance. They have the possibilities. They have the opportunity as well to put this World Cup on notice. When you look at their pool, sitting there with Wales and Australia and Georgia, three other teams that could very easily themselves do a lot of damage. So Fiji needs something here, and they could strike fear into their pool rivals. They're a team that will want to shock the world and qualify for the quarterfinals. Can they do it? It's going to be a tough ask, but I think that this is very much a possibility. They need to beat Georgia, and they need to beat either Wales or Australia, and hope that whichever one they beat, the other one defeats as well. But this is where they can prove something of what they've got. And I expect they're going to go all out, all guns blazing, fire to the wall, and just give France everything they have. This game is in France, so Fiji are already set and ready. They're settled, and they're good to go for the World Cup. Still a few weeks away from it actually kicking off. But that should be quite an intriguing matchup to tune into. So if you are around and watching at that time, grab that match, because it could be fireworks to see. There's 4 other test matches going on as well throughout the weekend, starting today. So some of them would have already taken place. One certainly has. That was played in midweek, which Tonga took out the Canadians. Once again, 2 weeks in a row, doing it comfortably, doing it easily. But we do have a couple of other interesting games. I think the most interesting one is going to be Samoa versus the Barbarians. When you look at the two teams that they've named, which they have already named their sides for this is going to be a good test for Samoa. I know the Barbarians like to play that, was a festival-style rugby where they kind of go crazy and do silly stuff. But in terms of man-on-man, player-on-player, this could be a very interesting matchup. And it's good to see some old names coming back as well. When you look through the side, Curtis Rona, Vurimi Vakatawa, Henry Spate, Tim Nanai-Williams, Herschel Yankees in the backline. That sets about lots of excitement throughout some old-school rugby fans. Jack Lamb is starting for the Barbarians, as is Jeffrey Tumunga Allen. Joseph Dweber in the middle at hooker as well for the Barbarians. More South Africans, Jean-Luc Deprez in there as well. A good-looking Barbarians team, let's be honest. It looks very, very solid. For the Samoans, on the other hand, though, a nice-looking team. A really, really nice-looking team as well. A good front row laid down from Jordan Lay and Michael Alea-Toa. Good propping options there. And then they, of course, have the back row with the man who's been quite expressive recently, Stephen Luatua. I want to see how he's going to go. He needs to lead this Samoan team from the front. Lema Sopoanga's there in 10 as well. Big chance for him to impress. We know what he's capable of. Has he still got the goods? He could be a critical part to the Samoan cog as well. Tumu Manu, another former Chief Super Rugby player, plays at a very high level. Ben Lam, Nigel Awong, Danny Tuala, you name it. This backline's got excitement. And they've got youth on their side a bit more than we see from the Barbarians with the likes of Henry Spades and Curtis Rona ranging on out there. So it's a good opportunity. I think they could run up some points here, the Samoans, and get a little bit of something of continuity in their team, which is what they've lacked along with Tonga. I think Fiji is the most set side. Samoa somewhere in the middle. Tonga is struggling with that sort of side of the game. But those couple of games against Canada, good, solid wins, but time on the paddock, absolutely priceless for them. Where this is going to go, I mean, it's so hard to tell. Barbarians games promise so much, but they often deliver in terms of competitiveness very little. I think Samoa will benefit from this just by having the game time and having these players out on the paddock together. An opportunity to, like I said, one-on-one, man-on, to get jobs done. But as a competition, as a contest, I think this one is anyone's guess. I would like to see Samoa win it, give themselves some confidence and give themselves some go-ahead momentum. But the Barbarians, as you know, they can just do some silly shit and they can end up turning up winning the game. So, for that matter, I'm going to say I want Samoa to win, and I think Samoa will win. 3 points will be a difference. It's always generally close with the Barbarians against these sort of sides that aren't top class at top of the world. And, of course, what the Samoans lack in that continuity is also what the Barbarians always lack. So that is something they can play on their side with two, well, are going to be pretty undercooked teams, let's be honest, especially that Barbarians side. Another couple of games going on that I'll touch on just briefly. Uruguay versus an Argentinian 15. So that's always interesting to see what these Argentinian 15 sides are capable of. We know they've got depth with days. They've got 6 million players. They've got 5,000 15s teams. So what that side's going to offer will be the intriguing part. But Uruguay, let's see what they can do. Again, for World Cup sort of confidence and build-up, I do hope Uruguay can put in a good performance. I don't think they'll win this game, but I think they should be able to get up and get some points, build some momentum, much like these other sides. You talk about the Tongas and the Samoas, the Fijis and the likes as well. Armenia, they need to get something for themselves out of this game, not looking at that true result. If they can make it close, that will certainly be good, but I think the Argentina 15 will take this one out by around 8 to 10 points. Hopefully nice and close. Less than that would be even better. A win for Uruguay would be fantastic because we could really put them on the map then as a challenging team for the World Cup. Last but not least, we've got Georgia versus USA. This should be a demolished job. It should be absolutely a thrashing. If you look through previous results, USA got done by Portugal. Great too last weekend by Portugal, 46-20. Outstanding. If you told me that before, I probably wouldn't have believed you, or if I previewed that game, I would have said, no, I don't think they'll win. But Portugal, fantastic. A 26-point win over USA, that is golden. And I expect Georgia to pile on the pain, much like they did in their previous matchup as well against, who was that? Namibia they beat, and of course Romania they smashed. So they're on a good run here. 26-18 over Namibia, 56-6 over Romania. They're in a good spot. They are in a really, really good spot. Romania lost to USA, but there's a big, big difference here. I want to see another 30-point win here for Georgia. I think they can do it. put the Americans to the sword. This is a game in Georgia. They are at home, so they need to put a performance in here and demolish the USA. Like I said, 30 points. That's my expectation, that they can put in performance, because I believe they are a genuine threat in this Rugby World Cup. And when you look through that pool they're in, much like we talked about the Fiji, they are possible upsetters. Big time. Big time Wales in Australia. Watch out, Eddie Jones. He is in a world of trouble, and so is Gatland as well with Wales. They have some big matches coming up in 21 days. So, not much to see there. I don't care about USA. They're not in the World Cup. They've got work to do. They need to develop. They need to play. So, good for them getting involved in this build-up preparation style, or sort of, what's the word, bracket that they can, international window. Good on them for getting involved. And I applaud all these teams that aren't in the World Cup for getting involved. The likes of Spain playing Argentina next weekend as well. Australia A, how bizarre is that? That team just completely baffles me. But we have some big rugby coming up in the coming weeks as well, before the World Cup even gets underway. So big one there for Romania. Going for the Argentinian 15. I want Samoa to win. And, of course, we're going with France, Italy, Ireland. Ireland for me, I don't think I'll put a pick in there. Ireland to pick up that win, and the Springboks as well. Should be some close, tight games in those fixtures. So hopefully you get to catch up with some good rugby this weekend. Next weekend we've got even more. The Fijians are up against the English. That is something that will excite me as well. Scotland and Georgia, certainly one worth looking for. Italy, Japan, Ireland, Samoa, New Zealand, South Africa, Spain and Argentina, Portugal, Australia A, and Chile versus Argentina 15. That is next weekend. I'll have another preview for those as well this time next week, before we get into the real World Cup stuff. Until then, though, big thanks for tuning in and watching. Like I said at the start, if you've got thoughts and opinions, let me know in the comment section below, and I'll see you all next time for more rugby. We've got rugby games, we've got rugby predictions, we've got all sorts. Rugby World Cup time is here. Thanks for watching, and take care.